with an existing interest.
Nikki Wagner.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I'm standing to support Part 2 of this bill, this Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf Environmental Effects Bill. And Part 2, as we've heard, covers the making of regulations and the processes around marine consents, hearings and decision-making. Now, we received a number of submissions around these issues, and we did make some minor amendments to the bill, and the Minister has also made further changes in her supplementary order paper number 100. Now, the regulation-making powers in this section are modelled on Section 43 of the RMA, and the committee believes that they set out clear limits for the use of regulations. And the Regulation Review Committee has reviewed the legislation and has ticked it off across its lists of what regulation should be and have signed it off. Now, we are familiar through the RMA for the three classifications. They are, of course, permitted activities, discretionary activities and prohibitive activities. And the default being in this case discretionary unless permitted by a marine consent or by a specified exemption. Now, because of the lack of information about the EEZ and the continental shelf and the nature of the emerging technologies that may be used to look at resources in that area, this bill seeks to favour caution and environmental protection. Now, there were several submissions concerning consultation requirements around the making of regulations because some people considered that the terms were too narrow. However, the consultation requirements on regulations are flexible, and they're flexible for a purpose. They're flexible so that the Minister can tailor the consultation to suit the significance of the proposed regulations. For example, consultation on the first sets of regulations may be much more robust and more comprehensive than perhaps on some more minor regulatory changes later on. But at a minimum, the Minister must notify and allow the opportunity for comment from the public, from iwi authorities and from persons with existing interests that are likely to be affected by the regulations. And the Select Committee subsequently made amendments to add the requirement for regional councils to be directly notified because, of course, regional councils are responsible for the 12-mile zone in their coastal plans. As I said before, this bill is predicated on caution because of the size of the EEZ, the unknown qualities of our waters and the new and emerging technologies that may be used to access the resources. Now, in making the regulations, the Minister must take a very comprehensive list of requirements into account. The Minister must take into account effects on the environment, effects on existing interests, also cumulative effects, and effects that may occur in New Zealand, the land of New Zealand, or even in the waters beyond the EEZ and continental shelf. The Minister must also take into effects on human health, the importance of protecting biological diversity, and the integrity of marine species and ecosystems. He or she must be aware of the importance of protecting rare and vulnerable ecosystems and the habitats of threatened species. Of course, we must take into account New Zealand's international obligations and look at the economic benefit to New Zealand of an activity and the efficient use and development of natural resources. They must also consider the nature and effect of other marine management regimes and best practice in relation to the industry involved or the activity involved, and whether that activity is permitted or discretionary. And finally, the desirability of allowing the public to be heard in relation to the activity or type of activity, and finally, a catch-all, any other relevant matter. So you can see it is a very comprehensive list, and this is the list that will form good regulation. Now, Part 2 also covers the processes around marine consents. And the Select Committee looked at these consents and added the requirement that the Minister must have regard to public interest in being heard in relation to marine, in relation to marine consent applications, and that any marine consent hearings we also added the ability to allow the questioning of a party or a witness by the leave of the Environment Protection Authority. Part 2 also provides rules around the timing and notices required for hearings, and the Minister's supplementary order paper tightens that up further by providing a time limit for a hearing to be completed, and that is 40 working days. Now, of course, there's a significant amount of work to be done to develop these regulations under this legislation, but we believe that Part 2 provides a robust and sensible framework for this work to begin. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Grant Robertson.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I thought we were going to have a different outcome then.
Well,